Hello, my name is Dr. Mukesh Chauhan. Today's presentation is on the role of creator versus the role of God on earth. The role of creator versus the role of God on earth. I already intimated that creator of a universe is different from God. It's definitely different from God. Now, the controversy with the American dispute regarding creationism and the introduction of intelligent design and the respective judgments of Supreme Court of 1987 in America and Dover Court case in 2005 with District Judge Jones made me think a little bit more. Now, it was construed in those judgments, creationism was an attempt to introduce such supernatural power and therefore religion through the back door in classrooms on the teaching of science. Science won't allow anything to do with religion. It's a separation in state with the American First Amendment between science and faith, science and church. They are separate. Now, Bonsell was one of the board trustees who tried to introduce intelligent design. And to be fair, he was absolutely castigated when he tried to introduce this concept in the teaching of science at Dover School. And he didn't have, the trouble was, the science in those days, 2005 is a long time ago, they didn't have the full knowledge about the creation and the mystery of origin of life. Now, today, I want to say at the outset that the judges, learned judges, who are by and large fairly objective and in their judgments, and one can't blame the judges because they can only deliver a judgment based on the information they have in front of them. And if they have incomplete information, they're not going to rule against the status quo, which was a prevailing science of evolution. Do remember, there are many flaws with evolution. I think Darwin was right about many things. He took us back in time, but he didn't know who the last common denominator was. And the sudden appearance of multiple species at the same time would blow holes in his theory of gradual change of descent over a period of time by natural selection. And this American paleontologist Gould found that the sudden appearance of multiple species, and he called this punctuated equilibrium. So the question arises, is there a transitional form or is there no transitional form? In my today's video, is my effort and attempt to educate people, to make them aware of the difference between the role of creator and the role of God. Creator, a day in the life of creator is, at the moment scientists say 13.8, 13.9 billion years old. That is the day in the life of the creator. That is different from the day in the life of God. A day in the life of God is approximately 5,000 years old. 5,000 years old. These two are completely different. And until and unless American public and science and religion understands the difference between the two, they will always be at loggerheads fighting and won't reach any satisfactory conclusion. Why? Limited knowledge is dangerous. Limited knowledge is dangerous. American physicist had wrote a beautiful book, Universe from Nothing. Universe from Nothing. Well, What the world of science doesn't know is that nothing which it says is something. Is something. What is that something? And that something from which life came about. Do remember, science says that at minus 273 degrees centigrade, there is no movement at all with any of the subatomic particles in the world, in the universe, at minus 273 degrees, which is the same as 0 degrees Kelvin after Lord Kelvin in London. It did this first work to show that. So if there is nothing which can move from that, how did something happen? How did something happen? How did life come about? The creator and creator's knowledge is completely scientific. And in those days, in those two respective judgments which I referred to, they didn't have a complete theory of everything. They had limited knowledge. And the Discovery Institute in America, in Seattle, was, I think, doing a very good job under the auspices of Stephen Meyer, who really has tried to fill in some of the gaps and tried to bring forward some of the new arguments in a very scientific, logical, rational manner. And you can't dispute that. You can't dispute that. But despite that, they suffer from the fact they don't have a complete theory of everything. Now, I have got a new scientific theory, MC theory of everything, MC theory of everything of origin of life. And in that, I explain that how creator from nothing brings about the entire universe or the world. And it's creator who made God first. What the American science students are denied is that this knowledge of deeper level of creation is intelligent design. Is intelligent design. There is a design. There's a designer. Take this single finger. You can't even bend this finger. You can't even bend this single finger if creator had not pre-planned this with the biological ratio of 1:1618. What is the significance of that ratio? What is the significance of that ratio? I've also discovered that, but not the subject of present discussion. So remember, the religious prayer and worship of whatever denomination which comes under God and religion, and world will need to understand the entire cycle of God and how the religious cycle under God manifests in this worldly cycle of 5,000 years, which is completely different from the creator who makes everything and has made everything in the universe. It is creator who makes human beings. Can you believe it? You won't believe it, because it's something which won't go inside your thick head. It's 1 second. It takes creator 1 second to make a human being, and it takes creator 1 second to take away human beings. 1 second. That's all there is. How does it happen? I want you to think about that. In the meantime, do remember, I'm putting forward this explanation, and I'm coming forward to help with the American Supreme Court judgment. It needs to be set aside because we cannot allow the American judicious intransigence to prevent the evolution of scientific knowledge with the American students, who can grow even higher and better and bigger in life and be more creative and more inventive. And it's that knowledge is what I'm talking about, which is completely scientific and has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with God, and has got nothing to do with worship. You can worship creator, and that is intelligent design. That's a scientific prayer, which I've also discovered, versus religious prayer. There's a difference between the two. So in order for me to succeed, I can establish that my knowledge of Creator, who's made everything, is completely scientific, and there's not even an iota, one word of religion or God or Jesus Christ or Bible at all in the American Constitution, which asks for separation of the church and the state from religious paraphernalia. So I can establish that both the respective judgments, in the lack of that previous knowledge of a full, complete theory, cannot be blamed for it. But I can now say, I can set that judgment aside with conviction. I can say with conviction, I can set aside that judgment. It is my intention to come to America one day to set aside the judgment. Why? Because the legal profession and the judges cannot be allowed to stifle the progress of science. They cannot be allowed to stifle the progress of science of the highest caliber, which I have discovered. There's only one person in the world who had discovered that knowledge, and that was Krishna of India on earth. Why was Krishna worshipped everywhere in India? The world has forgotten that. Because Krishna single-handedly discovered the finest, beautiful mysteries of origin of life and Creator and God and the entire universe and the worldly cycle under God. They're completely different. So I've got experience with British courts, all of them. Phenomenal experience in working with all the courts of appeal, High Court, Supreme Court. In those days, it was House of Lords, and then it was European Courts of Human Rights. But now House of Lords has been abolished, so it's the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal used to be there. And I also got experience in Indian Supreme Court and High Court. Now the time has come for me to go and challenge this with the American Supreme Court, so that the truth should prevail, the absolute truth should prevail about the knowledge, which is the key thing. Limited knowledge is dangerous. The complete knowledge will help to enlighten humanity and elevate the standard of human life on earth. Thank you.